slippy, greasy descent of the Odonate, and you can just say Michał Kwiatkowski taking no chances at all. Thomas Springus there with a flapping jersey in second position there, the rider just at the top of the screen there in that bright retinal burn orange of CCC Sprandi Polkovici is Jan Tratnik, if I can get my words out. He took the points at the top of the climb. But Magnus, nervous times on this descent. You know, as you go through these towns, when the roads are wet, we know traditionally in this part of the world the roads are dry, but when you get a little bit of rain, it looked like that was actually David de la Cruz had come across the gap, actually. Sorry, I don't think it is Michał Kwiatkowski.
No, it did look like de la Cruz on that. It wasn't quite Kwiatkowski's riding style either. But, yeah. But like you said, these descents and you know, they are very, very slippery, and especially this time of the year as well, there's a lot of gritting going on and sort of treating of the roads to sort of make sure that they're staying clear from eyes and so on. And when you're coming out down from some form of altitude, then you're never quite sure what the grip level is going to be like. So I'm surprised to see Movistar pushing it as hard as they have been on this particular descent. They don't really need to, but for some reason they seem to feel that they have to do it.
Yeah, we were just talking amongst ourselves in the commercial break. There's some big gaps opening. I actually thought at one point from the aerial shot it looked like Valverde was out the back and being chased back on, but they were actually pushing and applying the pressure at the front of the bunch. And it's worth just reflecting again on the situation on the general classification. Alejandro Valverde leads this race by 14 seconds from Luis Leon Sanchez. He then has a 26 seconds advantage over Jakob Fuglsang, teammate of Sanchez. Remember, those three riders escaped on stage 2, and Adam Yates is in 4th at 37. And then we have Jesus Herrada, the Spanish champion, riding for Cofidis now. He is 5th at 48 seconds. So you'd think a decent time cushion. You wouldn't have thought there are going to be any attacks, but maybe just keeping that pace high, just perhaps so somebody doesn't try anything on the descent, because we've seen this happen before. You get the right combination, especially given Valverde is coming off the back of an injury. Clearly he's got great physical form, but it's another question when you suffer from an accident like that, nasty crash, how you are in the head, how you are psychologically.
Yeah, I mean, every rider is different in that case. If you're a sprinter, then you tend to have that sort of goldfish kind of memory thing where, you know, it's good, but it only lasts for 3 seconds. If you're not that way natured, then a heavy crash can leave traces and can make you that bit more cautious. So maybe, like you said, they just want to make sure that they're keeping Valverde out of trouble and not having to go absolutely flat out. They're going fast, but not taking too many risks.
A bit of a regroupment now. At the bottom of the descent, you just see things flattening out. And there's the breakaway, just at the edge of town. And this is our sole leader now. A lot has changed on that descent. That is Stefan Kung. He is the current Swiss time trial champion. And consummate of this sort of effort. Looks so good on the bike. Very, very powerful indeed. A couple of years back, champion on the track as well. World Pursuit champion, no less. Took out a road stage of the Tour of Romandy in very cold conditions. So this is one of the few riders that excels in these cold, wet conditions. You can pretty much guarantee, I'd imagine, there's got half the peloton when they saw these conditions would have automatically, psychologically shut up shop and just want to get to the finish. But I can assure you, as we look at the general classification, as I described earlier on, Valverde leads from Sanchez, Fuglsang, Yates and Herrada. Primož Roglič is also up there in 6th position at only 49 seconds. So the top 8 riders within a minute, and then you have Kilian Franchini of Switzerland, best young rider, and then Antunes, the young Portuguese rider, now with CCC Sprandi Polkovici. He's in 10th position, rode a very, very attacking race yesterday on that climb to the line, and he rounds out the top 10. But no, Stefan Kung, an extremely good time trialist, and he is one of those riders that you could argue could hold this to the finish. It's a very flat run into the line, and what he has as well to his advantage is a tailwind, and he's pulled out another 6 seconds here, and I must admit, Magnus, he's looking very, very good at the moment.
Yeah, he certainly is, and you know, what a talent in terms of time trialing as well. So he's definitely got that big engine to be able to do a lone break like this. It's just a question of how many sprinters have we got in this race here today who want to have a go at winning the stage, and what teams are prepared to take the risks to bring it basically into a bunch sprint as well. So there's a few sort of calculations and that needs to be done by the various different teams in the bunch. And right now, though, Movistar are just doing what they do best on the front, making sure that Valverde's staying safe and as safe as he can do in these conditions.
Yeah, definitely. Just heading into one of these roundabouts there. One of the very, very valuable race marshals there, blowing the whistle, waving the flags, making sure the riders have got a good heads up of what's coming up, and they do provide such an important part of these road races, especially in these difficult conditions. I've often had a bit of a late heads up, especially when they've been suffering in the bunch. If you don't get any information, you look up, and obviously the braking distances are completely changed in these sorts of conditions. When you're banking the bike over in roundabouts, you do need plenty of time to make sure you slow down in time.
Yeah, you certainly do, and it's quite interesting to see now that you're allowed to ride disc brakes, that we haven't actually got more riders on discs on a stage like today, because there's been enough tests done by now that clearly shows that the disc has got a better stopping power in a straight line, and King is definitely going well there.
He is a little bit, perhaps. He certainly won't be complaining about a tiny bit of assistance, I'd imagine, he's getting from the moto, the motorbike there.
It's up to the motorbike to get out of the way.
It certainly is. He'll do what he can to go fast. Just confirmation there of the Orlet Mountain, won by Jan Platnik. So 26 kilometres to go of this final stage of the Tour of Valencia. Total distance of 135.2 kilometres. We have one leader out in front, Stefan Kung, the Swiss rider for BMC. And now we've got a couple of other riders hitting the front here. This is interesting from Astana. Maybe sensing a little bit of nervousness amongst the Movistar team, so trying to chase here, because none of the riders out in that front group are a threat overall. But quite interesting, you look at the damage, well, not damage, it's putting this peloton into one long line. And I don't quite know why, but it's going to get to the finish a lot quicker. That's one thing's for sure.
Yeah, but it looks like there must be a certain amount of crosswind coming in on this particular stretch of road. I am slightly puzzled as to why Astana and Movistar are pushing that hard. They don't need to. Kung is not dangerous for the overall, but like you said, certainly for Valverde, he's better off having his team on the front pressing hard, and he'll stay safer in that way. So it might be Valverde that's given the orders to keep pushing on, boys.
It could be, and no, you're quite right. Sometimes, well, quite often in these wet conditions, rather than riding in a bunch where it's you've got riders to your left and right and behind, it is actually far easier and a little bit safer to ride in one long line. Perhaps that's the thought, perhaps that's the instruction that has come from the director sport team, to just keep this pace very, very high. And if you're at the front, sat on the wheel, there's no problems at all. But what we've got here is a bit of a crosswind. And just looking at the map here, the wind is actually helping. It's in the back, but also from the side as well. So coming from their left-hand side on the run-in to Valencia. But it's all come back together now. Just see Oliver Naesen there, the Belgian road champion, just tucked behind, just on the inside in that tricolour, black, yellow and red kit, riding now for AG2R. But everybody, I think, has now managed to get back in contact, and it is, as you were, more of a, wouldn't exactly call this a gentle rhythm, but more of an even rhythm now being set by Movistar. And of course that one rider still out in front, Stefan Kung, powering away. Just look at that, real core strength there. Getting in that real aero position, hardly any body movement up top as well.
No, and that's the interesting thing with that particular position. I don't necessarily like it, but he's clearly got the strength, core strength and stability to hold himself on the bike in a good way. The one thing that you lose, obviously, if you don't hold on to the handlebars is, number one, control, but also you haven't got anything to counter hold the power that you're putting into your pedals with. So it just requires an immense core strength to be able to hold that position and, like I said, put down the power.
Which is what a lot of these teams have been doing for the last few years. It is there's far more focus, I think, on off-the-bike work, not just in the off-season, but through the season as well. These riders, again, another little bit, you saw a bit of a signal there from one of the Astana riders as we head back to Stefan Kung, ploughing that real lonely furrow. There's some very, very long, straight roads up ahead, and with a lead of only 22 seconds, it won't be too long before the peloton have him in their sights. But interesting tactics here from Astana, a real staccato kind of style to the speed of the peloton, ramping up the tempo at the front. Just being like to be a fly on the wall in the Astana team car at the moment. I just think it's just trying to, try and make sure they keep their two riders up front. That's Luis Leon Sanchez and Jakob Fuglsang, but also making it just a little bit difficult, or trying to make it as safe as possible. Because as you said, and we've both ridden in pelotons in the wet when it's a bunch, and believe you me, especially earlier in the year, everybody's adjusting to new bikes, new teams. There's a new feel.
Yeah,
it's a real nervous feeling, isn't it, in these sorts of conditions early season?
Yeah, it certainly is. But also, there's new technologies coming into play all the time. With new brake surfaces on the rims, there's new brake calipers coming out. How much stopping power have you got? Obviously, you've been training, but training is a different thing to racing and sitting in that spray all the time, and it just takes a little bit of time before you dial in and sort of understand the movements and understand your equipment to a certain extent as well.
No, I think that really is an interesting point, and nobody at this time of year really wants to take too many risks as well. So you've got a new kind of feeling within the peloton, riders on different teams, and therefore you've got different tactics within teams, a different dynamic within the teams, riders doing slightly different roles in different kit. So it's there's definitely, I think, for the first couple of 2 or 3 races, there's a bit of a bedding in process before riders get that bit more confident, but that adds, I think, to the tension, to the unpredictable nature of the peloton, throwing in some of these wet, cold, slippery conditions as well. And now we have Katusha on the front. Just looking through, they don't really have an out-and-out sprinter, apart from, I think, Baptiste Plancart, who rode for the Wallonie team before moving across to Team Katusha Alpecin last year. Didn't really have the season that I think he would have expected, but looking at their roster, he is one of the out-and-out sprinters from that squad. And meanwhile, Stefan Kung just managing to hold the same speed as the peloton, and that in itself, though, although he's not moving away, one rider holding the same speed as the peloton is pretty impressive stuff, especially in the last few Ks of a race.
Well, it's definitely very impressive, and we're coming up to that 20k to go marker, and now everyone is starting to think about position for the next part of the race. You're getting into that finale where you need to understand what teams are doing what, and everyone's starting to get a little bit edgy.
We have an interview now with Luca Mesquets, who's second.
Luca, you were second the first day here in Vuelta Valencia. We are back to a sprint finish. How do you think it's going to be today?
I think it's going to be quite chaotic in the final. The wet roads here can be so slippery. So, the position will be crucial in the last 5 kilometers. And it's also quite tricky, last kilometer with 3 corners. So, it's all about the position.
It certainly is all about position. Luca Mesquets, the sprinter for Mitchelton Scott, had a very, very good sprint on the opening stage, but I must admit I was mightily impressed by the power of Danny Van Poppel on at the opening stage. Kicked into a headwind finish with about 250 metres to go. I must admit, watching that back, watching the replays, I thought he opened it up very, very early, but his acceleration was so hard he opened up a gap. But as we head into a commercial break, who will be the winner on today's final stage? So Stefan Kung still out in front, but the bunch has him within their crosshairs on these long straight runs as we head in towards the city of Valencia. And just in the centre of your screen there in blue, with the yellow jersey underneath, that is Alejandro Valverde, sat amongst a posse of Movistar riders, all dressed in rain capes. Cold and wet conditions here today in Valencia. Only 8 degrees. And you can take off a couple of degrees as well when riders get wet with that wind chill as well. But Stefan Kung being drawn in metre by metre now by this bunch.
There's a few more teams getting towards the front now as well and starting to help out with the pace making, and that just makes for slightly more nervous riding within the bunch, and also every team is now trying to get organised, trying to sort of find each other in the peloton, and again that drives the pace up even further. So I think it's going to be difficult for Kung to hang on for that much longer.
I certainly think it is, but this is Willem Smith, the South African, working very, very hard for his squad, really pulling this bunch along. A couple of riders from AG2R Le Mondial up in the mix. They've got Oliver Nason. He put in a top 10 performance a couple of days back as well. But I think their protected sprinter was 5th on the opening stage. Just behind Danny Van Poppel was Clement Venturini. Small rider. Punches a little hole in the air, but very, very quick indeed. And I think it's worth going through a couple of the other riders I think who could figure in this finish, should they get positioning right, as we heard Luka Mezgec say, all about positioning. Several corners in the last K. I'll get Magnus to talk us through the run into the line in a moment, but we've got the Sasha Modolo, Dan McClay combination. Modolo was the protected sprinter, but then of course he fell in the closing kilometres. Dan McClay swapped over it, managed to get a very, very fine 4th place. Another outsider, Ramonas Navradauskas of Bahrain Merida, but not a pure sprinter. He's the kind of rider that would need to go long, I think. Hugo Hofstetter, who was 6th in the red of Cofidis. Also look out for Adrien Petit, used to be the lead-out rider for Brian Cockard, who rides for Direct Energy. And then Sondre Holst Enger, who's moved across to the Israel Cycling Academy. Finished around in the top 15. I don't think he was particularly well placed, but he's a very, very fast finisher indeed. Another outside bet for you, perhaps Alexander Porsev of Gazprom Rosvelo. But as you see the bunch being pulled along now by the AG2R riders, just talk us through, Magnus, this last 5 kilometres.
Well, with 5k to go, we got a roundabout that they go with a full length around to the and basically turn left, and then a couple of 100 meters after that is another right-hand turn, and then we got effectively what is 3.5, almost 4 kilometers of absolutely dead straight road with a couple of roundabouts chucked in, basically once a kilometer. Just under a kilometer to go. There's about 110, 120 degree left-hand turn. 500 to go as a right-hand turn, about 90 degrees, and then another sort of 90-degree turn with about 200 meters to the line. And like you said, it's not just who's got a fast sprinter, it's who's got a team or a couple of riders, because I think you will probably come down more to a couple of guys that find each other really well, like a McClay Modelo kind of setup, or a Trentin Mezgec combination as well, where you have that sort of, well, I wouldn't really want to put them into a second-tier sprinter in McClay and Trentin, but certainly someone who's capable of sprinting and happy to take those risks and can do that sort of 600-700 meter big turn, going through the corners in very fast indeed. And I think you'll find that this particular run-in, although it looks fairly simple with just a couple of sort of biggish roundabouts, it will be very technical and incredibly strung out.
I think it will, no doubt about it. Again, a long run-in, as you just described, right to the centre of this beautiful city of Valencia. There is this great aerial shot of the peloton. Still, Stefan Kung persists at the front. I think he might have stolen back a few seconds there. That's certainly more than 6 or 7 seconds. We'll get a time check. I would imagine that's around 10 or 12, maybe 15 seconds. But Stefan Kung, he won't give up. And again, an important getting out in front in these early season races. Of course, these races increasingly more prestigious. Getting up there early on the year, very, very important to get your team off to a winning start, but also a good indicator of how you're going as well. So getting in a breakaway, although it'd be nice to do a good performance, to get a ride in the top 10, it's also vitally important that you kind of test yourself as a rider as well.
Oh, it is, and some days you like I say, you just go out there into these breaks to just check the engine, check how am I doing, where am I at with this kind of things, and some days you actually need that extra bit of a workload as well. So you kind of look in at, from a training perspective, today might be a good idea to actually go in and break, and I need that little bit more work coming up towards the next couple of races, and it's obviously something that you go through with your sport director and your coaches and so on within the team. But I know there's certainly some riders, and I used to do that in the past as well. Certain days where I kind of went and asked the sport director, can I please be in the morning break? And he said, you know, go for gold. And,
but not many people used to put their hand up for that role.
I was quite happy about that one.
No, as you said, Max, it's really important this time of year. Although these races are very, very hard fought. You just look at the quality of riders, you know, populating the top 10. Valverde, Sanchez, Fuglsang, Yates, Herrada, Roglic, Kreuziger, some of the finest stage race riders in the world, also one-day riders as well. So this race, very, very hard fought for indeed, but equally it's a good opportunity to get out there, test yourself. Of course, all of these riders will be looking at their power, or at least recording it. Some riders choose to ride to power, others will have it taped up, or they'll just download the data. But again, days like this, especially if this is a race that's not particularly targeted by individuals, the coach will say, hey, you know, you need to make sure that you're riding at a certain average wattage. That's what we want to get out with some sorts of efforts. And on the flatter days, you can actually, without saying that cycling sometimes is easy, on the flatter days, if you just sit in the bunch, sometimes it's not overly difficult for riders of this calibre.
No, it certainly isn't.
And that, of course, isn't taking anything away from how tough this sport is. But put it this way, the riders at the front now, easily putting out around 350, 450 watts riding. And Kung, I would imagine here, Magnus, for a big lad, is going to be sustaining just around, hovering around 400, 380 watts at this late in the day, do you think?
Oh, I would say a bit more than that, to be honest with you. We're definitely, with this kind of an effort, north of a good way north of 400 for that size of rider. You know, I would probably even push up towards 450, 460 for a rider like this.
There we go. And for those of you scratching your heads thinking, what are Magnus and Matt talking about in terms of watts? It's basically a measure of the power that's generated by the rider. And that's collated.
It goes Stannard.
There we go, Stannard. That is one rider that will definitely, right at this moment, be putting out a large number of watts, and that's Ian Stannard, the former British road champion, double winner of Het Nieuwsblad, clearly thinking ahead to the classics and thinking this is an opportunity to really test my legs. Such a strong rider. Had a steadier year last year. He's been signed on again for Team Sky for another couple of seasons, but that is one powerhouse. Good little move there.
Yeah, very good, powerful move, and good to see him having a go again. I mean, Stannard had a troublesome season last year, and it's good to see him back again and having a go. And I think he's got both eyes firmly focused on the classics this year to go back there and really give it a good go.
Yeah, well, he signed another long-term contract with Team Sky that takes him through to 2020. And of course, a great year in 2016. Third in Paris-Roubaix, third in E3 Harelbeke, and of course a double winner, back-to-back in fact, 2014 and 2015, back-to-back winner of Omloop Het Nieuwsblad. But it looks like he's going to be brought to heel relatively quickly by the Katusha team. I think it is still William Smith on the front, but a good little workout. But that attack by Stannard and the subsequent reaction from the peloton has slashed into the lead of Stefan Kung. It's saying 4 seconds, but I think it's opened up a little bit. He is not giving it into the last 10 kilometres. And Stannard chooses now to drive to the front, attacks. Well, how often do you see that? A rider attacking, getting caught, but then staying on the front of the peloton, happy to drag them along. I mean, Team Sky haven't got a lot from this race so far. Wout Poels, David de la Cruz, Vasil Kirienka, Michal Kwiatkowski, Gianni Moscon and Diego Rosa, along with Ian Stannard. But Kwiatkowski, not a pure sprinter, because we haven't got out-and-out class sprinters in this race, apart from the likes of Danny Van Poppel and Luca Mesgets. The pure sprinters are thin on the ground. It's an opportunity for some of the riders, that punchier type of riders. Kwiatkowski rode to a top 10, so perhaps thinking, let's try and see what Michal can do. But again, the rider that's going to win today is a rider that obviously needs to be very quick, but also one that can take that calculated risk, because it's going to be very, very technical, very sketchy, particularly in that last kilometre.
Yeah, I think it will be, and we're inside the final 10 kilometres here now, and from this moment on, it will definitely be very sketchy indeed, and there's going to be riders trying to go and bridge up to Kung here and see whether they can add a little bit more firepower to the breakaway. But looking at how the bunch is moving around, there are so many riders who are keen to try and pull the bunch along, make sure that this is being strung out as much as possible. The more strung out it gets, obviously, the safer it gets as well for all the riders in the bunch. And like we said, it's certainly one of those somewhat dangerous and sketchy early season bunch sprints that we're coming into.
There is Stefan Kung just at the top of your picture. He only has about 20 metres advantage over the peloton. And how's that for an arrowhead formation? We talk about arrowhead formation. Almost perfect there, just for a couple of seconds. Got a bit wonky now, Magnus, but yeah, for a couple of seconds there was a perfect peloton arrowhead formation. Still being led by Katusha, the yellow and waspish black of Enel Jumbo also there too.
The bunch isn't actually that big either, so it'd be interesting to see how many of the fast men have actually managed to stay up here as well. To me, it looks like we've lost quite a few riders.
Yeah, well, there's only a relatively small-ish peloton that started out this race, but we understand that on the foot slopes of the only climb of today, the peloton did split in two. But I think the fact we've got Lotto Enel Jumbo happy to drive this along, and that is it for Stefan Kung. Great ride by the young Swiss rider. Certainly good blowout, really animated the stage. Congratulations there from one of his teammates. I think that was Brent Bookwalter, who patted him on the back. Many of these riders, big loved, keeping themselves as warm as possible. Last thing you want to do is lose control and not be able to feel your fingers, because then, given most of these riders will be riding electronic group sets, you won't actually know how to change gear.
Yeah, that is one of the problems with the electronic group sets. It's very difficult to feel sometimes.
Especially through gloves, and you can't actually tell which kind of which button you're pressing on certain systems. But there we go, Lotto El Jumbo, happy to drive this along, and that suggests to me, Magnus, that Danny van Poppel is here. They only have one out-and-out sprinter amongst their number. And now we have Astana moving up on the outside, perhaps keen to keep this pace high, protecting that second and third place on general classification. And again, they have no real sprinter. Their full roster, some very powerful riders: Andrei Grivko, Moreno Moser, Yevgeny Gidic, Sergei Chinetsky. Bilbao is there, and then the duo of Luis Leon Sanchez and Jakob Fuglsang, second and third on the general classification respectively. And is Chinetsky just on the front at the moment. I think just trying to keep their riders out of trouble.
Yeah, maybe they are, but you know,
Grivko perhaps,
yeah,
maybe going long.
Well, it's more of an opportunist type of sprint, I think, rather than a pure monster train and you know, that real big lead out. So hey, I think it's a possibility for someone like Grivko to have a go.
And also I think, you know, we talked about riders having a bit of a hit out on front. It's an opportunity for riders to gel as a unit, because some of these teams will have new members. It's an opportunity for the new guys coming in to slot into the lead out formation, take their turn on the front and get used to kind of drills and riding hard, because there's, you know, when the opportunity presents themselves, I think it's important to do that, and also get a good workout as well, because this Valencia, in a couple of weeks' time, we've got the Ruta del Sol, Vuelta Algarve, which are all going to be on Eurosport as well. All these rides important for riders to build their condition as we head towards the Classics campaign, and then of course the Grand Tours with the Giro in May, the Tour in July, and then latterly in August and September the Vuelta España. But it's still Astana on the front, taking it nice and cautiously, although that looks like it to be a little bit more grippy on that particular roundabout. But it won't be long before we head to 5Ks to go, and then 4 and a bit, and that long straight running.
Yeah, I think we are coming up to that 5 kilometre to go, so very, very shortly. And like you said, and we do have that very, very long straight down towards the final 700-800 metres, and it will be very tight. There you go, there's a 5 kilometre to go.
Just under 5 kilometres to go now. The final stage of the Tour of Valencia. The race being led by Alejandro Valverde. Astana, the squad with the 2 riders that occupy the other spots on the podium, Luis Leon Sanchez and Jakob Fuglsang. And it's their team who are leading the peloton. Wet, slippery, miserable, cold conditions. But what a race we have had. First stage won by Danny van Poppel. Stage 2 won by Valverde. BMC won at the team time trial. Valverde won again yesterday atop the Alto de las Canteras, and as a result holds a 14-second lead over Luis Leon Sanchez. But this, I think, now is going to be a day for the sprinters. They've got another roundabout to negotiate now. This is at the 4 kilometres to go marker. And then, as you said, Magnus, we essentially have just over 2 kilometres dead straight before they swing left into the finish.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of more roundabouts on the way down here to negotiate as well. But it will be very, very tricky regardless, and especially that final kilometre, just after the final kilometre, the left-hand turn there is going to be absolutely vital to get into that corner first, basically, with maybe one lead-out man in front of you. I think that's all that's going to be required, because the final corner is only 200 metres from the line, so ideally you kind of want to drop your sprinter off just before that corner and then let him light it up to the finish line.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point there. I don't think there'd be any room for anybody to even pass in that last 200 metres. It's a very short run to the line, and it is a 90-degree left-hander. So as you say, the rider, I think, that's going to win this stage will probably be the one that emerges in first or maybe second spot out of that final left-hander. We've got the small matter of another 3.5 kilometres to go now, and we've got Lotto El Jumbo just moving up the outside. There's Danny van Poppel, and also for the first time we can see a couple of riders from EF Education First Draft Pack, powered by Cannondale, in that pink kit. Remember, they've got 2 very, very good sprinters, Sacha Modelo and Dan McClay, Sebastian Langveld, Matti Breschel, Pierre Rolland, Tom van Arsbroek. and of course Sepp van Mark. Very, very strong team indeed.
Yeah, they are a very strong team. The problem is right at the start of the season like this now as well, is for the sprinters and lead-out men to find each other, for them to understand each other. What does my sprinter actually want me to do at this point? And it takes a few sprints for you to dial that in as well and get that feel for it. And every sprint is obviously different. So you can see a lot of riders now starting to shuffle around position, to start looking around over the shoulders, and some people like this lone Katusha rider up here clearly having lost his sprinter because he didn't want to be that close to the front at this point in time. And those things are just stuff that you as a team have to work out over the coming weeks. And it's not until you've done a couple of them that you really understand what is actually going on and what we need to do. So, but Astana still on the front, still very much in charge of this.
Astana leading the chase. Nobody willing to assist now. Who will be the team that take it up in the last couple of kilometres? Remember, just after the kilometre flag, they turn a very harsh left, almost back on themselves. Then about 200 metres, there's a right. And then with around 300 metres to go, there's a very, very sharp 90-degree left-hander. So we have two squads on the front. Astana now, Lotto Enel Jumbo. Remember, they have the winner of the opening stage amongst their number. Now we've got Team Sky on the left-hand side that looks like that's the shape of Ian Stannard. And also Vasil Kirienka leading through now at the moment.
Mitchelton Scott there on the left-hand side as well, just behind the Sky Riders. So there's 2 or 3 trains that are now operating, trying to pull into that final kilometre.
And it looks like Luca Mezgets is there for Mitchelton Scott, sliding in at about 5th or 6th wheels. 3 riders from Lotto Enel Jumbo. The rider in 3rd position is Danny Van Poppel. Looks like it's Sasha Modulo in there for EF Education first draft pack. Luca Mezgets just getting in the aero tuck in that blue jersey. A couple of other riders have appeared now from EF Education first. And also we have Oliver Nason of AG2R. Nason is the first rider to turn left now for AG2R. Takes that at speed. This is that very harsh left-hander. They now have a couple of 100 metres before a very sharp right and then a left-hand turn. So Ollie Nason, he's got his teammate in his slipstream, and that's Clement Venturini. So it looks like Venturini in a very, very good position. EF Education first rider just looking around. BMC also in the mix as well in the 3rd wheel. That could be Jürgen Rodens.
Right-hand corner coming up there.
It's the right-hander still. It is Oliver Nason on the front there. Jürgen Rollins is in 3rd position. Where is Danny Van Poppel? I think Van Poppel is on the wheel there. Sasha Modulo also in the mix. Nason still on the front. This is where things open out to the finale. Oh, and Nason goes. Rollins goes on the inside. Van Poppel in the centre. This is now the last few 100 metres. Rollins has stolen the march, but Danny Van Poppel is closing. Rollins of BMC looks as if they're going to take the win. Jürgen Rollins takes the victory. Van Poppel late lunge to the line. Rollins takes it from Danny Van Poppel of Lotto Enel Jumbo. What a ride by Rollins of BMC. Nason there, the Belgian champion, coming to grief. Superb final sprint for the final stage of the Tour of Valencia.
Good one.
Well, Magnus, that was a bit exciting, wasn't it?
Well, it turned out to be very exciting indeed. Nason doing a great job then, and then just pushing it too hard into the final corner. I think that held up Venturini as well, who just kind of had to unclip his foot and managed to clip in quite quickly again, but obviously lost positions there. And Roland's definitely very, very strong. Van Poppel didn't have much to come back with either.
No, great win there by Roland's, being congratulated by his teammates. 3rd place on the opening stage. Brent Bookwalter there, all smiles. Michael Shah also there. Sorry, that's Kilian Franchini. No, and Shah as well. And there's Greg Van Avermaet. Big hugs from the Olympic champion. And to be fair, Magnus, what makes it even more impressive for me is Jürgen Rollins pretty much did that on his own. I'd imagine he was looked after before that, but the last 3K, he completely freelanced that one, freestyled, got the right wheels, and executed that sprint to perfection.
Yeah, you don't always have to have that big train. You know, if you're confident in your own ability and you're confident in the wheels, and you can kind of spot who's going where. And let's just watch this last left-hand corner. Rollins goes in there, starts pedaling a little bit too early on the white line, and his back wheel goes first, and then down he goes. Venturini then just goes too wide, and that was it for his sprint. Van Poppel closing a big gap there then on Roland's, but just didn't have enough road.
He was closing. He had the faster pace, but the job was done by then, wasn't it, Rowlands? But did you see the line that Rowlands took on that last left-hander? Cut the apex of the corner, carried maximum speed. And basically there wasn't enough tarmac for Danny Van Poppel to catch up. It looks like one of the riders from AG2R managed to roll across the line, saving in third place. I think it was Venturini just managed to keep it going. Top three for him. But again, that just illustrates the risks taken. Riders in finales like this, in these wet conditions, they're on the very, very cusp of the tyre grip trade-off, aren't they? Didn't quite go right for Nason, but fair play, took it up, didn't he? He got his teammate in a very, very good position, and then up the inside came Jürgen Rowlands for a superb win.
But that's something that they could potentially work on as well, and for Venturini to maybe work out that on a wet condition day like that, he's better off just backing off a couple of meters coming into that final corner, just in case something like that happens. Just change the line ever so slightly so you're not completely in the same apex as the lead-out man.
Well, there's the confirmation. That's not quite right of the results there. We'll get confirmation of those in a few moments for you. I think there was a slight bit of confusion there, but we know that Jürgen Rowlands won the stage. The overall classification unchanged. Alejandro Valverde wins his third, the only rider to win 3 editions of the Tour of Valencia. He's taken the win from